Hi everyone, Tammy here, Flannel Chick MTB. Welcome to my channel. So I am at a trailhead. I'm about to gear up and take myself for a solo ride, which brings us to the topic of conversation for today's video, riding solo. Now, the idea for this video hit me over the course of the last few weeks because it seemed to be a conversation that I was having over and over again. I would mention to someone I was going for a ride. They would ask me who I was riding with, and I would say, I'm going out on my own. And they would say, oh, you ride by yourself? Or I would be talking with someone about where they've been riding lately, and they would mention that they haven't been on their bikes in a long time, that they hadn't been able to organize with anyone, schedules weren't jiving, or that they didn't have anyone to ride with, which got me thinking about this whole idea of solo riding. Are you in the yay category? Are you in the nay category? Are you in the nay but would like to be in the yay? So in today's video, I want to talk about what I like about riding solo. I want to share with you a little bit about what I take into consideration when I'm about to plan a solo ride, and also maybe some tips on how you can maybe habituate yourself a little bit if you are nervous about riding solo, if you've never ridden solo, but would like to build that muscle for yourself. So I'm going to gear up and let's chat more about riding solo. Okay, so I am out on the trail all by my lonesome, and let's talk solo riding. So I mentioned in the intro, this video idea came to me after having a few conversations with people, and the conversation I think that hit home the most for me was how some of you aren't getting out on your bike because you might not have anyone to ride, that you're finding it hard to either find another person to ride with, find a group to ride with, or you're having a difficult time because of your work schedule or your family schedule, maybe coordinating rides with other people, and maybe you're reluctant to ride by yourself. And so one of the downsides, I guess, of feeling reliant on other people to get out for your rides is just that you're always going to be waiting for someone whose agenda is the same as yours, who's ready to go for a ride, who's available at the same time that you're available, who is keen to ride the same types of trails that you want to ride. And so I think about this in the same way of our comfort level with taking ourselves out to a restaurant to eat, or going to see a movie by ourselves, or traveling solo. That once we get comfortable with that, once we acclimate to that, then there's so many opportunities and possibilities for us that we can create for ourselves on our own without being dependent or reliant on other people. Now, one of the beautiful things about riding solo is you get to ride when you want, you get to ride where you want, you get to decide the trail that you ride on, you get to decide how long you ride for, you get to decide how many breaks you take, how many snack stops you have, how many photo opportunities you take, and the pace that you ride at. So these are really great advantages, I think, especially for a beginner rider, actually, who can then better own their ride. You get to then decide what each ride looks like when you have the ability or the willingness or the comfort or the confidence to ride solo. Now, today's video I'm filming out at a local trail system within the city limits, and if you haven't already had a chance to check out some of my other videos that showcase riding within the city limits, have a look at that playlist or those individual videos. I'll put the link in the description below, but that gives you an idea of where you can ride within the city. And one of the great things about riding in the city is that in the next couple minutes, I'm going to talk with you about some of the factors that I take into consideration when I'm planning a solo ride. And to be quite honest, they are less relevant. They apply less to riding within the city. And so When I think about riding in the city, I'm certainly much more confident, much more comfortable about going for a solo ride in the city as compared to riding in the mountains. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But in the city, there are things that I can take for granted. For instance, cell phone coverage, city paths or city mountain bike trails tend to be multi-use trails. So it's not uncommon. Just sitting here for the last couple of minutes, I've seen a number of hikers go by, dog walkers gone by, a person on their bike gone by. So by no means am I out here on my lonesome. There are lots of people around, and so for beginners to solo riding, sometimes that angst can be lessened a little bit if you think about planning your rides, your first few solo rides out in the city. So take a look at some of those videos. It gives you a little peek at what you can expect on some of those mountain bike trails within our city limits. I mentioned there were some things that I consider when planning my solo rides, and two of the most relevant ones, I think, especially for riding in the mountains, are remoteness, how remote I'm going to be on my ride, and level of difficulty of the trails that I'm about to ride. Now, remoteness is important because of a number of factors, I think. So for instance, in the city where I'm not remote at all, I am really well aware that there's lots of people around me. I can hear riders on the trail below, and as I mentioned, there were dog walkers and hikers passing by. And so I know that there are people nearby should I need some assistance. The other factor with remoteness that's important to consider is sometimes when riding out in the mountains, we don't have cell phone coverage. And so if you run into any kind of difficulty at all, it might be difficult for you to call for help. Now, if you're not aware of this, on trail forks, there is the option to dial for emergency services. So if you're not familiar with that feature on trail forks, or you don't have trail forks, I think that would be an important thing to download onto your phone if you're going to start riding solo. So when I think about remoteness, there are a few considerations. Remote in terms of how near am I, or how likely am I to have passerbys? Will there be hikers on the trail? What's the likelihood at this time of day, on this particular day of the week, that I'm going to see other mountain bikers on the trail? It's not been unheard of for me to go riding in the mountains, Prairie Mountain for instance, midweek, midday, and be the only person in the parking lot, and certainly be the only person on the mountain. And so when planning my solo rides, for instance, if I were riding somewhere like that where I know it's pretty remote, there's not going to be a lot of people, I don't have cell phone coverage, then I make very different decisions about the trail that I'm going to ride. And so I mentioned trail difficulty. Riding solo, I am more apt to ride a familiar trail and to ride a trail that's well within my skill level, that I've ridden before, that I'm confident on, that I haven't had any problems on any sections before, that I know that I can navigate pretty well, and unless there's some fluke accident, that I'm actually going to be just fine on it. And so I would opt out of riding a trail that I found more difficult in the past, or a trail that I wasn't familiar with, if I was riding solo, especially if I was riding solo where I know that there isn't going to be a lot of people in the area, and or I don't have cell phone coverage. In terms of remoteness, the other thing that I take into consideration is, what if I have a mechanical? How hard would it be from this trail system to walk my bike out? To walk a bike out that maybe can't be rolled out? How far am I from the road? If I'm starting the trail late afternoon and I run into a mechanical issue, am I going to be pushing my bike out in the dark? Remoteness also factors in for me in terms of wildlife. Although living in the mountains or in the mountain area, we can see wildlife anywhere at any time of the day, really. And the truth is, I've seen bears on all the trails that I've ever ridden. But if I'm riding solo, I'm more likely to pick a trail that maybe is less likely to have a bear or to have a cougar on it. I'm careful if I'm in rutting season, and I always carry bear spray with me. But taking into fact kind of wildlife sightings, bear sightings, I probably pay a little more attention to that when I'm riding solo. There's something about being with another person or being in a group that coming head on with a bear on the trail, that would be scary in any situation. But in a solo situation, it is something that I take into consideration. It's something that I'm a little anxious about. And that's one of the reasons that I think riding within the city limits is just a little bit easier when you're first beginning to ride solo. Chances are you are not going to run into a bear in the city, although it's not impossible. And so it's one less thing to worry about as you're getting accustomed to riding by yourself. So I guess in a nutshell, the things that I consider when I am riding solo is I just simply try to have a plan B. A plan B in terms of mechanical, a plan B in terms of potential injury, and a plan B in terms of wildlife encounters. I always let someone know when I'm going into the mountains where I'm going to be, the trail that I'm going to ride, and my ETA in terms of being back within cell phone coverage. This helps me just know that should something go wrong and I'm out there in the middle of the mountains by myself, that not too much time will pass before someone comes to rescue me. I mentioned one of my favorite things about riding solo is really our ability to own our own ride, to go at our own pace, to ride the trails that we want to ride as long as we want to ride where we want to ride when we want to ride. Now, if you're nervous at all about solo mountain biking, or you're giving some thought to maybe getting out there for the first time this season on your own, there's some things that maybe you can try that might help you be a little bit more comfortable with this adventure of solo mountain biking. Now, of course, we're all different, and what makes me a little bit nervous, like wildlife encounters, might not even cross your mind. So give some consideration to what's blocking me. What's the obstacle to my getting out and riding solo, to taking myself out for a nice mountain bike ride? What is it that I'm most worried about? What am I nervous about? And then think about how those factors might be mitigated. What would it take for you to feel just a little bit more comfortable? I think it's important to know that you don't need to be 100% certain or 100% comfortable before taking action. Sometimes we just need to get 60% comfortable so that we are willing to take the first step to try something that's novel, to push outside of our comfort zone, to give ourselves a chance to experience something new. Now, maybe for you, planning your first solo ride in the city is going to be what makes a big difference for you. Maybe getting out to a trail that you're really familiar with, that you've ridden numerous times, where you have cell phone coverage, where you're likely to see lots of passerbys, where it's a multi-system or a multi-use trail system, and so that you don't feel, although you're out for a solo ride, you don't feel like you're completely out in the wilderness alone. Now, the other strategy that you might want to try is to simply pick a trail and ride for 15 minutes and agree with yourself that after 15 minutes, you're simply going to turn around and head back in the same direction. This avoids you having to commit to a full-length hour upon hour ride or a half-day ride or a full-day solo ride. Go out for 15, turn around, come back, and you don't have to worry about getting lost. You don't have to worry about mechanicals. You don't have to worry so much about being gone for a long time on your own. Even if you were just to go out for 15 minutes and turn around and come back for another 15, you've done your first 30-minute solo ride. So breaking it down that way might allow you just to build a little bit of confidence and a little bit of comfort in being out there on your bike on your own. The other way that you might think about doing this is when you're out with another person riding or you're on a group ride, when you come near to the end of the ride, maybe say the last 10 minutes, you let the group go ahead without you. You hold back a little bit, give them a 5-minute head start, and then finish the trail on your own. This can be helpful if you're nervous about something happening and being stuck out in the mountains for an extended period of time. The people who are riding with you know to expect you within a certain amount of time. They're not too far ahead of you, and certainly if you don't show up, they'll turn around and come back for you. So in a nutshell, what do I love about riding solo? I get to have as many snack breaks as I want. I get to take as many pictures as I want. I get to ride where I want. I get to ride when I want. I get to ride how fast I want. I get to ride how slow I want. I get to walk when I want. I get to stop when I want. I get to eat snacks when I want. Did I say I get to eat as many snacks as I want? Snacks are important. I get to pee when I want. And you can have a snack break whenever you want, as many as you want. You get to own your ride. I get to do my ride however the hell I want. And so do you. Get out there, go ride your bike by yourself. So I'm really curious, do you ride solo? If so, what do you like about it? And if you don't ride solo, what's holding you back? I'd love to hear. What are some of the worries, some of the apprehensions? What are you most nervous about in terms of getting yourself out there on your bike, on your own for your first solo ride? Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear if after this video you end up taking your first solo ride. Please leave a comment below. Share this video with anyone you might know who is hesitant to ride solo, and happy riding, everyone.